Hello, everybody. You're very welcome to a new Redefining CyberSecurity podcast here on ITSP Magazine. This is Sean Martin, your host, where I get to talk about all kinds of cool topics in cyber and risk management and beyond. Hopefully, in a way that explores how we can not just protect the business, but actually help them generate revenue and growth in a safe and secure manner. And in doing so, I'm honored to be able to talk to a lot of cool people as well, who are much more versed in specific topics than I. I have a nice overview, but sometimes it's good to dig deeper in some of these things. And today I'm thrilled to have Tobias Halmans on. How are you, Tobias?
Hello. I'm good. And you? Thanks
I'm
for having me.
very good. You're very welcome. And yeah, this is going to be fun. Today we're going to be talking about kind of the quote unquote emergency preparedness for operational technology environments. So OT, as it's affectionately referred to, because we like to shorten everything to acronyms, right? In this industry.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Tech is for sure, and definitely cybersecurity. Um, so we're going to look at what it means to be resilient and have good disaster recovery, and how do we measure success, and who knows what else we'll dig into there, specific around OT environments. Before we get into the topic, though, Tobias, maybe a few words from you about who you are, what you're up to, what led you to where you are, and maybe why you're passionate about this topic.
Um, yes. Thank you. I work for a consulting company, admeritia, in Germany, and we do our business is to do consulting like all around OT security. And for me in particular, I am actually an incident responder. So most of my work is all around that. And of course, also incident preparedness. And business continuity is touching on that. So I often have to just to think about that as well. And customers often ask what should we do to be prepared in the best possible way. And that's what I've been thinking about, what I've been studying about in recent years, and where I have also some experience in developing business continuity planning, and also testing and applying that, which is of course especially interesting. And then that's to also put that into practice, not only put it on paper.
It's always the fun
That's
part.
what I'm up to, basically.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And this conversation was driven. I often get inspired. I know it's nerdy. I get inspired by things that I see primarily on LinkedIn, sometimes other sources. But this crossed my path, or my desk, if you will, through Sarah Fuchs, who mentioned an article that you wrote on Medium that's talking about business continuity and resilience in there. So I'm going to start there, actually. What prompted you to write that piece, and maybe if you can give us a summary of what it is and what the outcome of it should be for people that read it.
Um, yes, maybe to give you an idea of where that all came from is, as I said, usually it comes from an incident response perspective. So there is some sort of cyber incident. Doesn't matter if it's in an IT environment or an OT environment, and at some point you will the incident is investigated, and you have found out what has been going on, and you eradicate the incident. And then you need to recover everything. You want to go back to normal operations. This is where we ask for business continuity plans, so to say. So of course we ask that beforehand. um, but this is where this comes into play when you talk about cybersecurity. And we did a lot of research and a lot of also projects on incident readiness and incident preparedness. And when it came to the point where we discussed the recovery, um, uh, I yeah. It made I somehow came aware that there is a huge difference in making such a recovery plan. If, on the one hand, if you do it in an if you ask IT guys to do it in an IT environment, and on the other hand, if you ask OT engineers to do recovery in or a recovery plan for your OT environment. So yeah, actually, to be honest, we tried to use at first. We tried to use the same methods for both scenarios, and then I realized, okay, this is somehow different. We need a different approach. There is it's the same goal after all. You want to recover as quickly as possible, but the way you do the preparation is somehow different. So in my article, I made a brave statement saying this is this is the thing that is mostly different between IT and OT. Well, I'm open to other opinions, but in my opinion, or to my experience, this is something you have to really to take care. If you want to make a disaster recovery plan, who am I talking to? Am I talking to an IT guy? Am I talking to an OT guy? You need a different approach. We start to realize that, and this actually made me write this article. It came out quite long, so a lot of differences that have been spotted. Yeah, so that's where it came from, and yeah,
So
what
when
yep.
yeah, so when you say approach, yeah, I guess just general view from this from my perspective is there might be nuances, right? Where an IT environment looks like this, and you might have to kind of maneuver in a certain way. In the IT and the OT environment looks different because of how it's networked or the protocols or whatever, and therefore you have to maneuver a different way. But you said approach, which to me seems a little more strategic in how you define what needs to be done, not just not just how you maneuver. Um, and perhaps that's a way. You also mentioned the ultimate goal is the same, but what's the difference in the approach that is worth noting here?
um, um, well, at first you need to have a different way to let me say to talk to people. If you talk to IT people, you can. I mean, what are usual scenarios for IT disaster recovery? Number one, perhaps ransomware. You want to prepare for a ransomware scenario. Um, IT people they know that this is dangerous, so that's a good scenario for them. If you talk to OT engineers, first thing they ask you is, yeah, okay, what does this apply to? Does this apply to my SCADA system? Well, this might be a Windows based. Yeah, that would be nasty. I don't want that. But maybe my plant is still running because I don't really need my SCADA for my operations. So as long as my DCS is running, um, I don't really care about ransomware. There's some incident responders, some a vendor, whoever coming recovering my SCADA system. In the meantime, I can run my operations manually. So and then you start thinking, okay, what will I respond to that? What other scenario is dangerous to an OT environment? So yeah, of course, if you have a power outage, yeah, production plant will be down after some time. Okay, what do you do then? Yes, then they say, okay, that will be bad, but I have a recovery plan at hand. because we do this on a regular basis. We do plant startups like every 3 or 5 years because we need to shut the plant down for maintenance. Shutting down and recovering is nothing that we really worry about.
As long as it's planned, and I guess, yeah. And then in a situation where it's maybe not planned, it's still familiar because they've done it, right?
Yeah, that's the first, perhaps the first miscommunication that can happen. As you say, it's not always only about the recovery. Maybe the recovery is already planned, and you know what the recovery should look like after a maintenance window. Yeah, but you're perfectly right. What if the shutdown is not planned? How do you do the shutdown? And this is in OT. This is something especially interesting because you somehow need to do it safely.
I was just going to say safety is paramount
Exactly.
in OT. Yeah.
What would the IT guy say if you ask him about shutdown? Oh, just switch it off.
Switch it off, turn it back on.
Yeah, switch it off, turn it back on, and uh, yeah. So there are, as you say, it's nuances, but they make the difference. After all, they make a difference in the way you communicate to people, and of course in the answers you will get. And those answers is yeah, that's what you need to bring into your final result, into your disaster recovery plan. um, I'm talking from my perspective here, so I am a consultant, or no, I mean, who does things like that. Usually it works like some management on top level management. They say, okay, we are somehow afraid of business outages. We want to have a disaster recovery plan, and then they start. Then a CISO or a consultant like me, they come and start breaking down the business into different business processes, and then they talk to whoever is responsible for that process. How can we? What is the how important is your process? How can we recover it? And yeah, I don't know, if you go to HR department, if you go to sales department, this is of course they will always say my process is the most important one. If I'm not if I'm not working, then the whole business is at risk. Yeah, but asking a few questions, then you will get a better picture, of course.
Right. Well, to that point, if I may, because
Sure.
it starts with the business impact analysis, right, which ultimately determines that landscape. So what's what's the impact if it goes down? What's the impact if the integrity is shot? What is the impact of the business if something happens? And so my question on that point is, where do you see that part of the program of being prepared and resilient in the organization being driven by? So who do you see is running the BIA, the business impact analysis, and do you see that security is part of it generally, or is security an afterthought, or do you see two teams? There's general business impact analysis, and then I'll say cyber impact analysis that kind of run in parallel. I'm curious because security seems to be bolted on a lot of times, and I'm wondering what you're seeing.
Mm, um, well, well, what I see is that business, most of the times, business continuity follows security in OT. So they do risk assessments
Okay.
because they. I mean, it makes sense. They, at first you want to see the whole picture of what could go wrong in yeah, due to a cybersecurity risk. And business continuity, at the end of the day, it's just the answer to a certain kind of risk. It's for example, let's go back to ransomware. This is just one scenario, or power outage, another scenario, or flooding, natural disaster, whatever. It's just one scenario where just one risk scenario where your response or where your mitigation should be a business continuity plan. And as soon as you have determined that, you get aware, okay, I'm not quite sure what my business impacts are. So I need a business impact analysis. Maybe you need it, maybe you don't need it. Uh, so the NIST standard for that, for example, they assume that that the business impact analysis is actually closely related to a risk analysis. And that's what I also see most of the times. But of course, in general, it's two independent things, because business continuity, it doesn't necessarily have to do with cyber.
Right.
There's also other reasons where business continuity needs to be discussed. Let's look at COVID a few years ago. It's not the IT systems or OT systems in this case that are not available anymore. It's the people, because they cannot come to office or cannot go to visit the customer anymore. And that's also a situation where you need business continuity. So in fact, it should be two different management systems for that, to cover all possible scenarios, not only the cyber scenarios. But we see that it's the most cases that we see, it's driven from cyber, to be honest, because people are afraid of those cyber scenarios to happen.
Yeah, and I guess to your point, the response and then the recovery can vary dramatically depending on what the actual incident is, right? So is it a data integrity thing? Is it a workflow process and speed issue that gets injected into the, like, making things spin faster than they should, or
Like segment,
valves opening and closing when they shouldn't, that kind of stuff. Very different response than we see some lateral movement on the network due to ransomware, and it's spreading, and we have a loss of data. So I guess I'm curious, kind of this chicken and egg thing, where how do organizations approach this? Because I hear you saying cyber is driving a lot of this, probably because the scenarios are interesting, I'll say, and clearly security people can speak to the fear of what can happen when something bad occurs on the OT network. So I guess I'm rambling a little bit here, but I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, if you try to manage all risk across everything, it's a huge endeavor that may never finish. So I'm wondering how we get to the point where we can say, here are the threats, here are our weaknesses, here's the impact of the business if the threat actually compromises or exploits a weakness, so that we can, and then the prioritization of all that stuff. Are we, generally speaking, are we in a good place for kind of that loop or back and forth to take place, or is it the loudest voice in the room gets the project budget?
It shouldn't be like that. I wouldn't. So if I get your question right, you're asking something like, is the incident preparedness, the like, is it the easiest thing to get budget for, because incidents always are frightening? Is that your question?
So I think what I'm trying to understand, and maybe you can paint the process for me, but my sense is that somebody, you don't have unlimited, organizations don't have unlimited resources to prepare for unplanned downtime, regardless of the use case. But some parts of the business are impacted more. Some of the threats can have a bigger impact, regardless of where it touches the business. So how do those conversations go, where they say this has the biggest impact on the environment, which may get budget because it's a very clear scenario, versus here's a small incident, but it could have the biggest impact on the business, and therefore that should get the budget. Who's driving those decisions? Because I hear you say the CISO and security are really driving some of this BCP stuff, which may or may not directly relate to what's the biggest impact on the business. Does that make a better way to put it?
Okay. Um, so it's a little bit hard to tell. So to be honest, those kind of projects are not always risk driven. Um, uh, very often they're compliance driven. Um, as you say, of course, there are frightening scenarios with huge impacts, with huge possible impacts, although the likelihood may be small. Um, Especially in OT environments, as I said, if you come up with scenarios to OT engineers, they may they don't really want to. The first thing is they ask how could that happen. That's usually a thing you don't ask in business continuity. You just assume uh, it could happen, although the likelihood is low. But if it happens, the impact is of course very high. Um, but as I say, as I said, I would say the low likelihood is rather something that um, is not beneficial to get the budget for those projects. So managers they tend to say, okay, our OT environment is closed, and we don't have internet access, we don't have emails, we don't have much vectors for initial access. We do not prioritize that, although they know this is where the impact is the highest, definitely. So if you have a production outage for a few days or even weeks due to a cyber incident, not every company would survive that, depending on how huge the incident is. Yep. So that's what I see. And as I said, on the other hand, those things are also compliance driven, because policymakers demand that, and insurances they want you to prepare for that. I don't know, in internal policies, management, ISMS management systems, policies. That's what I see mainly where that comes from. And if it comes, if it's risk wise, as you say, um, then it's because they think that there is actually a likelihood for things like that to happen. I hope this answers your question, or gives you at least some insights
Yeah,
on
yeah,
how
I think
these
so.
things start off.
I think so. So yeah, I mean, I'm curious in general, and my primary audience is IT and the CISO for the IT environments, and so part of my questions are for them to perhaps understand how their world looks compared to their counterparts in the OT space, and it leads me to this question about the as more and more things come online in OT, connecting to the internet, perhaps even connecting to the IT environment. Um, how do you see some of those connectivity and intra-network connections changing how organizations look at things?
It's a huge change, I would say. Uh, for so organizations look at things differently in a way that they see more risk generally. Of course, the more cyber risk. Not only the need to talk about business continuity planning or service continuity planning for OT, but about risk in general. Definitely, yeah. And maybe coming back to what I have said recently, since business continuity planning is very often cyber driven. Um, yeah, this is as you say, OT is more and more connected to the outside world. Um, this is why organizations think about risk, and as a consequence of that, they think about uh, business continuity planning, and they think about compliance as well.
Right, right.
This new world arising beyond the level 3 firewall somewhere.
Hmm.
Uh, it needs to be included in what I have in my risk management.
Yeah, yeah. And when we look at disaster recovery as well, um, so I kind of pointed to it earlier, but the different threats on different systems, and of course, we just talked about increased connectivity and interconnectivity. Um, it means perhaps more people are involved in the response and recovery, which of course has to be captured in the disaster recovery plan. So, describe that process to me. Who's leading that charge? Is that also cyber driven? Because I'm thinking like
Not only
communications, right? In IT, you might have a dedicated system that's not on the main network where you manage tickets and calls and things like that. Um, what does the OT environment look like? Did they leverage the IT stuff, or did they leverage the SecOps or incident response teams systems? Do they have their own? Well, what's that world look like?
um, okay. There's engineers, OT engineers that are yeah, let's say they administrating the systems. Um, Usually you have different engineers for different technology. um, their job is to somehow keep it running. um, Oftentimes they are a little bit overwhelmed when they have to do when they are asked to do the recovery on their own. Oftentimes they really rely on service providers.
Hmm.
So in
In terms
oh,
of the manufacturer of the device primarily,
yeah,
or
mostly.
a third
So
party? Yeah.
it's Honeywell, Siemens, Amazon. Out there, they have service contracts, and again, I'm telling that story, talking to the OT engineer, asking him about what will be the recovery look like. He's going to say, okay, I have my support contract. My vendor will be here within 2 hours, and he's going to do the recovery for me. Um, then in the next meeting, you will invite the vendor and ask him what is his opinion about what is in that service contract, and he will say, okay, no, that service contract, if we have any kind of disturbance in the system. We will come over, have a look at it, and resolve it, and then we go away. If we have to recover the entire thing, which is tens or dozens of servers, workstations, hardware, software, whatever that may look like, they say, okay, we don't have enough people for that, or we don't have the knowledge for that. And anyway, this is not in our contract. We are not obligated to do that. So these are the kinds of discussions that you will hear. Starting off, making a business continuity plan. So coming back to your question, what does it actually look like when it's working? It looks, as I said, there's OT engineers, there are the vendors, or the vendor staff that actually knows how to set up the system. And then there's a lot of crisis management team around this. Usually, OT companies already have crisis management teams in terms of safety. So when there is a safety hazard, when there is a severe accident, they have crisis plans for that. They're supposed to have, and they don't care where that crisis comes from. Does it come from a cyber incident, or does it come from some random accident? It doesn't matter. The crisis team takes care of it, but of course, at the beginning, they don't know about how to resolve a cyber incident. So that's where they actually need support, and where you need to bring together the vendors, the engineers, and perhaps some skilled incident responders and forensic guys that actually know how to chase a threat and to chase an adversary out of the network. Yeah, that's basically what it looks like in a mature organization, I would say.
Okay. So in that same mature organization, I would expect them to understand where the shared responsibility and limitations of their vendors land, and have a plan in place when an incident occurs where they know we're going to get support up to this point, and from there it's on us either to figure it out ourselves or find yet another third party perhaps to work that out. Which, if you recognize that, hopefully it's through a conversation with the vendors, and then once you have that understanding, then and confirmation of responsibility, the business continuity plan, disaster recovery plan would reflect that, I would think, for the mature organizations. Does that exist generally, or does it fall down a lot? Do you see a lot of organizations have an incident, get to the point and realize our vendors can't help us and we have nothing in place to get past from B to Z?
um, well, yeah, at the beginning, expectations are usually a little bit higher on both sides. So it's as you said, you create the business continuity plan by talking to each other. What do I expect from my vendor? What does the vendor expect from me? Things like licenses or stuff like that, passwords. Uh, they don't know all the passwords for recovering all the system from the backups. So these are the things you need to find out in the business continuity plan. And as you say, as in a mature organization, it's that's actually the same as in an IT environment. You need to know about who is responsible and who is capable of doing what on a particular system. So that's basically the same as in an IT environment. So what can the administrator do? Can he set up the whole thing and recover it from the backup, or where does he need help from? Does he need help from his managed service provider or from his cloud platform provider? Where is the help needed? What exact kind of help is needed? Um, that takes a lot of room in our discussions, preparing those business continuity plans.
And so, how do these teams define success and measure success? Because in IT, the incident response is mean time to recover, time to respond, mean time to recover, that kind of thing. And the language is slightly different in OT, right? There's recovery time objectives and things like that. So how do those measurements or definition and measurement of success look like in OT, and maybe how does it differ from an IT environment?
There's not much of a difference, I think. So a recovery time objective is um, exists for both IT or OT environments. It is just a little different as I said, to apply it to an OT environment. Actually, it has to come from the business. So if you talk to the engineers and you want to find out about the mean time to recover, or the recovery time, rather about the mean time to recover for the process, most of the time it's already too late. So you need to get that information from somewhere else. They will say, okay, I have. They only know the plant is running or plant is not running. So either on or off. And if there's most services there's actually two kinds of services in OT. Ones that are the first kind that is urgently necessary for the process. So if you shut that down, the entire process will shut down in a very short time after that. For example, the everything that is related to the DCS that controls the process. If you don't have that, the process you need to shut down the process manually, or it shuts down itself. And the second kind of service is those that are where actually nobody cares if they're running, because the process is running without them for a very long time. For example, data acquisition for whatever purposes, for performance monitoring or something like that. You can usually easily for weeks or months live without those kind of things, without those services. Um, uh, and yeah, it's a little bit hard to put the recovery time objective in that framework. So usually you assign a recovery time objective to a single service in your network. Um, and if you ask for a recovery time objective for, I don't know, any service in the DCS, they will say, okay, it's at the end of the day, it's 0 seconds, because if the service is not running, my plant is not running. So this is not the right way to communicate, and it's not the right question to ask. Yeah. So coming back to your question, how to measure this success, how to measure if the recovery time objective is met, is you need to step up to a higher level, where you have defined your your mean time to recover. So how long is it bearable to be out of production, to have the production outages for the business, whatever that means. If the business will completely go bankrupt because of that, maybe then it's already too late.
Right.
or if I have a revenue loss of, well, let's say 20%, 50%, whatever, and then I will define that as my mean time to recover, and then you will go to the engineers and say, okay, your business wants you to be up and running again after this amount of time. What needs to be done in this scenario, and in this second scenario, and in this third scenario? And this is where, people start giving interesting answers.
I love it. I appreciate that. And so I want to, we're coming up on time here. So I want to close with this. It's a question I often ask my guests who are primarily in the IT space. Um, when I picture the business, and we didn't say the 2-letter acronym that seems to be touching everything nowadays, but when organizations innovate and they build out new business processes, launch new products, enable new services in the IT world, it brings a plethora of new technologies and new microservices and third-party vendors and all this stuff, which starts to get pretty complex. And with that complexity, I see driving the need to have better detection and response in the IT world. And so my question to most of my guests is, if security were able to really drive or be a significant part of the definition of what gets built and how it gets built and deployed, perhaps their job as security detection and response becomes easier because they're helping to shore up and close the gaps and mitigate the vulnerabilities before it's even built. Um, so I'm wondering if we're in a state in the OT world where we have information that says, here's what this environment could look like, much more safer, much more resilient if we did this, because we know these threats are coming and we don't want to put that exposure in place in the beginning. Are those conversations happening in OT where they say that the environment needs to change or should change to be more secure from the design and the architecture, and therefore not leaving risk exposed and killing the security team in response?
Yes, those conversations are taking place definitely in recent years. Um, they're
Do
taking
you have any
place.
examples,
Um,
like where, I don't know, protocols are not used or connections are not made or different vendors are selected? Are there any examples you can share where that's
yeah,
happening?
um, I know of a redesign there. So a operator of a chemical plant, they recently redesigned their safety environment. So consisting of safety PLCs, engineering workstations, sequence of events. So that's kind of a historian for safety PLCs, and some data acquisition, OPCUA. And I know this conversation took place between the vendor and the operator, and also myself, and that's why I know that those things are going on. So they decided to have a completely separated network for that, with dedicated security architecture. So they have their own Active Directory, they have their own patch deployment, they have their own antivirus, um, which hasn't been there before. So that environment was a couple of decades already running and in operation. Um, and when the day came that they just yeah, wanted to replace the systems just because they were old, and this is where those conversations of course take place. And then the vendors say, okay, maybe you want to consider security. Here we have a nice offer for you, how you can secure your your safety controllers, which is your number one crown jewel. Here's our idea how you can do better. And then those discussions start. And then they, of course, the operators, sometimes they come to us and ask, okay, is this something that really helps me? Or is this just something for the vendor to make more money? And then sometimes we say yes, and sometimes we say no. But those are the kind of conversations that take place. And it's not only vendor driven, it is operator driven, it is also compliance driven, of course, because those days you cannot ignore that kind of legislation also applies to OT environment. You have to take care of things like that. Auditors come around, ask for that, ask nasty questions,
Yes.
and you want to be
Different
prepared for
different
that.
bodies, but same uniform. So, well, this has been really insightful, Tobias. I appreciate your time. We're kind of at the end here, but is there something that we didn't touch on that you think folks should hear before we close?
There's so many things that we could continue talking about.
How about
So
this? Maybe one or two things we should talk about some more, and that organizations should be thinking about.
um, I think I think there's not much more to add to that. But let me try to carve out the main points that I would coming back to that article that I had in mind,
Yeah.
that I wanted to share, and I try to share it here once again. So as I said, IT and OT disaster recovery preparation, the goals are the same at the end of the day. You want to maintain your business. You want to make sure that the disaster recovery does not take too long for your business to be not longer a business anymore. But you should be careful in the way you communicate to people, and things in OT need to be explained differently. They need to be questions need to be asked in a different way. Different questions need to be asked to get the answers that you actually need for your recovery preparation.
Yeah. Sounds like also being prepared for questions from specifically the engineers that may not have a same level of understanding and level of trust with the cyber part of the equation. To your point earlier, how or why would this happen, or could this happen?
Yes.
So being prepared to, again, in using your other points you made, and respond, be prepared for those questions and respond in a way that helps them understand and builds trust with the team to see it through. So, Tobias, it's been a
Yes.
pleasure, my friend.
Sean.
It's good to meet you, and
Thank you
hopefully,
so much.
I don't know when I'll be in Germany next, but perhaps we
Let me
can
know.
meet up there or at one of the many conferences I attend. Maybe you'll be at one of those. We can meet in person. But I appreciate you writing that article. Appreciate you taking the time to chat with me here, and I appreciate Sarah for sharing that. So it crossed my path. Now I'll be following you, so I'll get direct access to new stuff that you write. And I would encourage everybody to connect with Tobias and keep the conversation going there. Of course, on LinkedIn and other social platforms if you want to engage with us. Thank you for listening and watching today. Please do subscribe, share with your friends and enemies if you so choose to do so. And Thanks for watching another episode of Redefining Cybersecurity on ITSP Magazine. Thank you.